Today, we're going to talk about all of Satoru Gojo's insane fights in Jujutsu Kaisen. We're also going to keep track of his wins and losses along the way. So let's jump right into his very first fight, which is actually when Gojo was just a kid against the bounty hunters Ogami and Jiro Awasaka. Okay, this wasn't a full-on battle, but it still counts as these guys were sent to kill Gojo. Why? Because this kid was the first person in around 400 years to be born with both the Limitless Technique and the Six Eyes, so he literally had a 100 million bounty on his head as a kid. So they had their plan ready and were just about to take him out. But yeah, that's when he just stared them down, and they could feel his overwhelming power, so they got terrified. Yeah, they got so scared they never committed another crime again, as they were terrified Gojo would come after them. So I'm actually going to count that as his first fight, giving him his first ever W as just a little kid. But okay, now we're getting into some real fights, and the first fight we're going to talk about that we actually saw, or, well, kinda, was against Bayer. When Gojo and Geto were on a mission to protect Riko Amanai, the next star plasma vessel, a curse user group called Q tracked her down and tried to kill her. And while Geto was out saving Riko, Gojo got surprise attacked by Q's strongest member, Bayer, who threw knives at him. Problem is, this is Gojo we're talking about, so every single knife just stopped mid-air thanks to his infinity. And even though Bayer knew about Gojo, he still tried to fight him, and he asked if the rumors about him being insanely strong were actually true. And Gojo, he just tells him to apologize or die. And yep, off-screen, Gojo absolutely destroys him and even snaps a photo afterwards as proof. Now sure, Gojo's obviously had fights before this, but we're only going to count the fights we've actually either seen or at least heard about. So the next fight we actually see is against Riko Amanai. Yup! After having literally saved her life, she wakes up, sees herself being carried by Gojo, and she literally throws the strongest slap in history and cancels his infinity. Honestly, if you can get a clean hit on Gojo like that, that's a win in my books. So sorry Gojo, but Riko officially hands you your first loss. Anyway, moving on, we've got the cloning curse user. After grabbing Riko and heading to Renchoku Junior High, they suddenly get surrounded by clones. But yeah, Gojo is literally holding Riko with one arm while casually beating down clone after clone with the other like it's nothing. And once he figures out which one's the real guy, Gojo tries to finish things off stylishly with his curse technique Reversal Red. But that didn't work, so instead he just knocks him out with a punch. So yep, a super easy win for Gojo. But his next fight is not as easy, because now he's up against Toji Fushiguro. After finally escorting Riko all the way back to Jujutsu High, everyone relaxes since the mission is basically over, and Gojo even drops his infinity since he's super exhausted from keeping it active the entire time. Boom! Toji comes out of nowhere and stabs Gojo straight through the torso from behind. How could Gojo not sense him though? Because Toji has literally zero cursed energy, so this badass is relying on nothing but his insane combat skills and ridiculous raw strength. Thanks to Gojo's cursed energy though, he didn't get that hurt from being stabbed. And that's when the fight begins, with Gojo blasting him with blue, blowing apart buildings and trying to force Toji out into the open. But Toji is just way too fast and unpredictable, constantly switching weapons, using cursed spirits to hide his movements, and attacking from blind spots. Toji then pulls out the Inverted Spear of Heaven, a cursed tool that completely cancels cursed techniques, meaning Gojo's infinity, his ultimate defense, just stops working. And that's when Toji goes all in, stabs him, slashes him, and finishes him off with multiple brutal hits, leaving Gojo collapsed, and the fight is over. So, the winner is Toji Fushiguro as he completely outplayed Gojo. So, is Gojo dead? Nope! Just when it looked like Gojo was actually done for, Gojo achieved a profound understanding of cursed energy and used the reverse curse technique to save his life, meaning Gojo literally awakened. And Gojo's first fight with his newly awakened powers was once again against Toji Fushiguro. But this time, things did not go well for Toji. At first though, Toji obviously thinks the job is done and Gojo is dead, so he's just casually walking when out of nowhere, Gojo stands right in front of him. Toji is completely shocked, and Gojo, well, he's a little out of it, since everything about cursed energy suddenly makes perfect sense to him. But Toji instantly goes for the kill again. But now, Gojo is literally just floating, completely calm, and dodges every single attack while firing off Curse Technique Reversal Red, blasting Toji straight through a building. That's when Toji realizes Gojo has become an absolute monster. Still, he doesn't back down, and instead uses the inverted spear of heaven attached to a chain to attack him from a distance. But sorry Toji, the Honored One reveals the final limitless technique, combining both blue and red, and unleashes Hollow Technique Purple for the very first time. So a massive wave of imaginary mass tears through everything in its path and erases it from existence. It completely obliterates Toji's side, destroys his weapon, and ends the fight instantly. And moments later, Toji Fushiguro dies. But yeah, this badass is still standing. But that's when Gojo became the strongest sorcerer of today, and his next opponent, that was against Miguel during the Night Parade of 100 Demons. While chaos is breaking out all over Tokyo and Kyoto, Miguel shows up and tries to stall Gojo so Geto's plan can keep moving. Yeah, that's a terrifying job. So they start fighting, and Miguel relies on his Black Rope Curse tool, which disrupts curse techniques on contact, meaning he can cancel Gojo's infinity and actually punch him. Still, Gojo barely takes the fight seriously, casually wipes out a giant curse spirit that tries to jump him using Curse Technique Reversal Red, and then absolutely destroys Miguel. Sure, Miguel eventually retreats with the others, so technically Gojo didn't finish him, but it's still an obvious W for Gojo. Now we get to the very first Gojo fight we ever saw in the series, and that was obviously against Sukuna in episode 1. Right after Yuji eats Sukuna's finger and the King of Curses takes over, something crazy happens. Yuji actually regains control of his body. But Gojo, he wants to test if Yuji actually can contain him, so he says he wants him to switch with Sukuna for 10 seconds. So Yuji gives Sukuna control, and yeah, Gojo just toys with him like it's nothing, showing he's actually way stronger than him. And while Sukuna obviously wants to keep fighting, the 10 seconds are up and Yuji snaps back into control. So technically, the fight didn't have a real winner, but I'm still gonna count this as a win for Gojo, since he showed he could have easily taken Sukuna out if he really wanted to. Anyway, we now reach Gojo's fight against the special grade curse, Jogo. While riding in a car with Ijichi, Gojo senses Jogo following them, so he casually steps out to keep him safe, and right away Jogo drops in from above, trying to crush him with a surprise attack. But yeah, Jogo really underestimates Gojo, as even though he goes all out with massive flames, exploding ember insects, non-stop attacks, convinced he's burned Gojo to ashes, he hasn't even touched him. Nope! Thanks to Gojo's infinity, every attack basically stops before it reaches him, and when Gojo explains it to him, Jogo is shocked. After then blasting him with punches and with Curse Technique Reversal Red, Gojo decides to turn the whole fight into a teaching moment and literally goes to pick up Yuji so he can watch. Though that obviously pissed Jogo off, so he pulls out his domain expansion, Coffin of the Iron Mountain, and think it's game over. But Gojo just smiles and drops his own domain expansion, Unlimited Void. And with Jogo completely trapped with infinite information, Gojo just calmly walks over and rips Jogo's head off. Before finishing him off though, Hanami shows up at the last second, distracts Gojo, and escapes with Jogo. So technically Jogo survived, but this was still an obvious win for Gojo. Moving on, we've got Kuzo Kumiya. During the Goodwill event, Juzo teamed up with Mahito, Hanami, and Shigemo to invade Tokyo Jujutsu High, and Juzo's job was to put up a barrier that blocked only Gojo, letting everyone else move freely. But of course that didn't stop Gojo, who destroyed the barrier, and the first person he went after was Juzo. And Juzo, he was actually super happy. Wait, why? Well, because he wanted to turn Gojo into a hanger rack. Yup, he's crazy! But of course that plan didn't exactly work out, as Gojo just crushed his arms and legs, getting another easy W. But talking about Juzo, we head straight into Gojo's next fight, which was against Hanami. After dealing with Juzo, Gojo tracked down Hanami, who was fighting Todo and Yuji, and he unleashed his Hollow Technique Purple, which obliterated the forest in trying to exorcise the curse. However, Hanami actually managed to just barely escape, and even then, Hanami was seriously hurt and barely clinging to their life. So as Gojo stopped the battle at the Goodwill event and almost took Hanami out with just a single attack, I'm gonna have to give another W to Gojo. But alright, next up, we've actually got Hanami again, but this time together with Jogo and Choso. It's 7 p.m. on October 31st in Shibuya. And yeah, this is where everything goes completely insane, as a massive curtain drops over Shibuya, trapping thousands of civilians inside. Sorcerers from everywhere get called in to handle the situation, but inside the barrier, the people are forced to call for one person only, Satoru Gojo. So of course, the strongest sorcerer shows up, and after heading down into the underground platforms of Shibuya Station, Hanami, Jogo, and Choso are all waiting for him. Now normally Gojo could wipe all 3 of them out easily, but the entire battlefield is packed with innocent civilians. And Gojo, he can't just go all out, because if he does, lots of innocent people will die. So Jogo and Hanami take advantage and activate domain amplification to get past Gojo's infinity, but Gojo realizes their plan, takes off his blindfold, and straight up says he's gonna take Hanami down first. So instead of relying on his infinity, Gojo uses raw cursed energy with pure hand-to-hand combat and just destroys Hanami. Then he powers up Limitless and straight up crushes Hanami, while Jogo and Choso are forced to watch as their ally gets wiped out in seconds. So yeah, messing with Gojo is not a good idea, and he takes another W. That said, the fight in Shibuya is far from over. Yeah, Hanami might be done, but both Mahito and Kenjaku now join the fight. Jogo and Choso can't do much on their own, but then a train pulls into the station and it's packed with transfigured humans. So these monsters instantly start attacking civilians, and with panic and chaos everywhere, and Gojo being attacked from all directions, it looks like Gojo might actually lose. But nah, Gojo activates his domain expansion, but only for 0.2 seconds, which was enough to overload everyone's brain with infinite information and freeze both curses and civilians in place without permanently frying the civilians' minds. And then, for the next 299 seconds, Gojo goes on an absolute rampage and annihilates all the transfigured humans by hand to save everyone. But yeah, Gojo was super exhausted after that, and when Geto, his old best friend, comes out of nowhere, old memories hit him all at once, and just as he hesitates for a second, Geto, or of course Kenjaku, activates the prison realm, and Gojo is trapped and then sealed away. So after a little win streak, Gojo finally takes another L and is sealed. So is this the end for Gojo? Of course not. After being sealed on October 31st, he was then released on November 19th. Yep, after 19 days, Gojo was back. And Gojo's first fight after being released and coming back absolutely jacked was actually against the Jujutsu higher-ups. Yeah, after being released, Gojo went almost straight to the Jujutsu higher-ups and massacred them. Why? Because he absolutely hated them, and he wanted to end their corrupt leadership which had been hurting innocent people and sorcerers for decades. So he just straight up took them all out, then told Gakuganji that he was now in charge. So after getting this super easy W, we now reach Gojo's last ever fight, and that was obviously against Sukuna. These two actually agree to fight on December 24th, and when the day comes, Gojo and the crew set up a sneaky opening play. As Ijichi sets up a barrier, Yutahime buffs Gojo with a whole ritual, and Gojo launches a 200% hollow purple from long range. And it works. Sukuna doesn't react in time, and the whole area gets absolutely shredded, and Sukuna's reinforced arms get blown apart. Then Gojo teleports in, and the real fight starts, as they start throwing hands, and Gojo has the upper hand. But then they clash with their domain expansions. The problem for Gojo is that Sukuna's domain has an open barrier, so it can attack Gojo's domain from the outside and break it. So Gojo starts getting sliced up by guaranteed slashes while constantly healing himself with reverse curse technique. But Gojo does not back down. He uses simple domain, falling blossom emotions, flips his barrier conditions, keeps reopening his domain, and basically does brain surgery on himself with RCT to keep his technique running. Insane, right? And then he actually hits Sukuna with Unlimited Void for just a fraction of a second, and Gojo rushes in and crushes Sukuna's heart. And for a moment, it looks like Gojo won. But yeah, that's when Mahoraga is summoned, and this monster shows up and starts adapting to all of Gojo's abilities. And to make things worse, Sukuna turns the fight into a 3 versus 1, with himself, Mahoraga, and now Agito as well. Gojo still goes crazy though, as he lands black flashes, deletes Agito with max output blue, and then he drops an unlimited hollow purple that nukes the area and deletes Mahoraga. At this point, Sukuna is cooked. I mean, he's literally burned, missing parts, and barely standing. So again, it genuinely looks like Gojo won. But nope! Sukuna cuts Gojo with a world-cutting slash, a cut that cuts space itself, so infinity doesn't matter. And with that, Gojo is cut in half, and he loses. So yep, the strongest sorcerer of today lost against the strongest sorcerer in history. And there you have it, all of Satoru Gojo's fights in Jujutsu Kaisen. Which fight was your favorite? Let me know in the comments below. Thanks for watching, and watch this video next.